Welcome back to the Homeschool Advantage Podcast. I'm your host, Bex Buzzy. Today's guest is Crystal Wagner. Crystal is CEO of Triumphant Learning and host of the All-In Homeschool Day Podcast. As a life and homeschool coach with over 13 years of homeschooling experience, Crystal helps parents cultivate a thriving home atmosphere. She loves reading books, researching and finding great resources, organizing and making lists, and sharing what she knows and finds with others. What sparked all this was that early in her homeschool journey, she found a support group that met monthly. It was a safe place to learn from other homeschool moms who were a little ahead of her in the journey. The support group became the lifeline that kept her going on during those difficult days. And now she has the privilege of supporting other homeschool families. In this episode, we talk about how her work helps homeschool parents who are struggling and empowers them to become more confident in teaching their own child. Also, the most important change you can make is to learn how to be a thermostat so you can set the tone of your home. And lastly, you don't have to make big changes to see a significant difference in your home. Small changes compound over time. So go grab your coffee, go grab your tea, and a pen and paper, because you're not going to want to miss what Crystal has to say. Let's get into the podcast. Say hello to our guest and tell us, what is a fun fact about your industry that will really surprise our listeners?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I was shocked when I learned this fun fact. And basically, when something happens, it triggers thoughts that trigger feelings that then prompt you to take action. And all of those are valid, and it's all really happening. The interesting thing is that the emotion is actually triggered by a chemical, and that chemical only lasts 6 seconds.
Wow.
So if you stay in that emotion, which it's a valid emotion, all emotions are valid, they're data and they give us information. But if you stay there, at some level, you're choosing to stay there.
Oh, that is so powerful. And it really puts me in check, because now I'm like, oh, so that's that feeling I get after a little while where I'm like, no, I'm mad. And like, I literally make the choice at that point. Wow. It explains a lot. It's very, very powerful. Now, swinging into what you do, like, how did you even learn this information? Like, and how does it work into like what you do? Because I know you're in the field of helping parents cultivate atmosphere, and through the homeschooling community, you're doing amazing things. So how did you learn that, and what do you do?
So that is an interesting story. I actually, when my daughters are now 15 and 18. So when they were 7 and 10, so a while ago, I heard about this concept of being a thermostat instead of a thermometer. And so basically, you are choosing your emotions so that you can influence the situation around you like a thermostat instead of just reacting like a thermometer. So over the years, I've been trying to just live that out. And what does that mean? And exploring that. And then when I started my coach training a couple of years ago, I heard a podcast about emotional intelligence. And I went, oh, that is what I've been trying to do. So I learned more about emotional intelligence. I've been reading everything that I can find. And that fact is just in some of the training that I've done through emotional intelligence.
So how important do you believe like emotional intelligence, EQ, is important over IQ?
I think they're different.
Yeah.
They serve different purposes. Some research shows that you can have very intelligent leaders, but if they don't have the emotional intelligence to be able to manage themselves, they're not going to lead as well. And this directly impacts us in our homeschools, because if we are not in control of ourselves, then we're not setting a good example for our children. We're not setting that tone, the atmosphere in our home where our children want to learn, where it's conducive to learning. So that is really what influenced me to be a thermostat, to be able to create that atmosphere where I wasn't reacting, because let's face it, if we're with children 24/7, it can start to make your blood boil some days. So I think as the leaders in our home and our homeschool, it's important that we manage ourselves.
Absolutely.
And it's important that we are smart about what we do. And, it's important to have the IQ, to have the intelligence to be able to go out and do what God's created you to do. But I think he's also given us this gift of the emotions, but we don't have to let them control us.
So good. I've just been learning so much about like EQ, IQ. I think there's another one called CQ. And there's like so many Qs all of a sudden. I'm like, whoa, like this is pretty intense. And I guess, since as humans, we're multifaceted, it makes total sense that, we're not just, unidimensional, because there's just so much about us, right? We're created in an amazing image of our creator. So what's about the focus of your work? So what is the focus of your work, and how do you support the homeschool community?
Yeah, so I take a look at the entire home and help parents to get control of their days, because if your days are out of control, then you have a hard time being that thermostat. You may not be home enough to be able to invest the time that your children need for you to help them with their learning. Then we also work on just managing your emotions. We work on cultivating relationships, because homeschooling is not just about academics. It's about so much more. So whether you are focusing on the relationships or on training your children's character, helping them develop the life skills that they need, and then what I am loving doing right now is helping parents learn how to shift. There's a continuum that you go through. And when your children are young, you are pretty much controlling them. They need you to do everything for them. And as they get older, you start hearing me, mine, self. And that's a good thing. It's hard, but it's a good thing. And then you turn over a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more. And then suddenly they're teenagers. And so we're no longer controlling them. And if you are, you probably are realizing it does not going as well. But our focus shifts from control to influence. So we learn to be mentors. We learn to be coaches. It's not necessarily easy for most of us. It's probably really hard. It's been something that we've been learning. Thankfully, my daughters and I have a great relationship, and there are times where, like, mother, that is not what I need right now. I have to back off. I'm like, okay, you're right. I need to step away for a few minutes, and then I'll come back, and I'll be back into the coach mindset, and I'll just ask you questions. So it's a learning process.
I love that. Yeah, and it's so cool, because you do have to develop and in a way evolve throughout your relationships and grow through them. Really, it's really growth. You're growing through your relationships. Everyone's growing, everyone's changing, everyone's getting to new places. And I think that's really so powerful and beautiful. And that's really where those relationships are built, right? Through those challenges, through that growth. And I love how you said, like, you go from, being in control to your kids wanting control. And then you become the mentor coach, where you become the influencer. And it really is that. Because as you were saying it, I was thinking back at my teenage years. For some reason, I can still remember those years like really, really well. And I remember thinking, like, that's what I wanted my mom to be, a strong influencer in my life. But I didn't want her to tell me what to do. I just wanted to see it. Like, I just wanted to be like, well, are you living it? You know what I mean? Like, are you doing it? Like, are you the one who's gonna, are you going before me? Are you giving me an example? Like, these are the things I really thought of. Like, I really wanted that. Like, I wanted just to be led. I didn't want to be told. I was actually one of those kids that would have followed. Like, I would have just followed her lead, because I really did respect my mom a lot. And I still do. Even after her passing, she's still someone I really do. I'm very grateful for. And it's really interesting. And it happens as you get older. You realize that there could not have been another parent for you. Like, you really realize, totally, like, there would have been nobody who could have done what you did, right. And I love that. And I love how you've taken that charge to actually help parents in this area and bring some normalcy. I do think the world is trying to strip away parental rights and just so many things away from parents. And really leave them confused and unsure of themselves when they've been given everything to be the person that they were meant to be. They're meant to be that child's parent. They're meant to be that child's educator and the one and influencer and all those things. And so what inspired you to create this, like to start this?
I think just living it out,
Yeah.
realizing that I did not know how to be a coach to
Wow.
my children.
Mhm.
I call myself a recovering control freak because I wanted to be in control. That's what
Right.
helped me to feel secure and to know what was going on. But as they got
Yes.
older, I couldn't keep that control.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's huge to be able to like even self-reflect like that. I mean, how many parents,
Yeah.
I mean, is that one spot that you find that maybe is a little bit of a struggle for parents to self-reflect in that area?
I think a lot of parents don't realize how much they're controlling.
Mm,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
I've been having more conversations recently with parents and around this topic with teens, and they have so many strong desires for their teens, and they still want to be controlling their schedule and what's going on and what they are doing and where they're going in the future. And this is the time that we need to let them fail
Yeah.
where it's safe, not
Wow.
wait until they're out of our home.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Can we just expand on that really quickly? Because
Yeah.
that's I feel so strongly about that as well. Like being able to let people, kids fail and in a safe place where we can literally guide them and normalize these things. Like, can we just talk a bit more about that? Like,
Yeah, and I want to say first and up front, it's hard and I fail at it miserably again and again. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's so important. We don't want our kids to hurt. We don't want them to have a bad grade reflected on their transcript. We don't want them to be late for something, but that's the only way that they actually learn. Turning over the responsibility for my children taking their medications when sometimes that means that they don't take it every day,
ooh,
making sure that they get to where they need to be on time once they're driving. Well, you didn't leave in time. You're late. You're not ready on time. If they're old enough to leave them at home, that was the consequence. If you weren't ready when we were ready, then you weren't going with us. But it's hard. So it takes a shift in the parent's attitude to recognize that there are days that your child will fail. They will be frustrated. You will be frustrated. And you want to just reach back in. I keep trying to regain that control and help them in these areas. And I realize, back off, back off.
yeah.
I recorded a podcast episode with my daughter recently about helping teens with time management skills.
Wow.
And that was her big message is multiple times she said to parents, just back off. We know we've failed. We know when we're not doing it right, but you got to let us try.
Wow, that's really, really powerful. You know, I can literally think back at my mom always saying to me things like, that wasn't how I raised you. That wasn't, I'm like, oh, I know. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry, you know. And I think as I was growing up, my mom also had ideas and thoughts of how my life should be based on like, you know, her love for me. I know all of it came from love. That I know. I know
Right.
my family didn't do it out of any other reason but love. But, you know, it did put me in like in a rebellious state in a sense. Like I had another choice but to rebel if I wanted to be able to get my own thoughts. And that just makes me think like how many times like a kid doesn't want to rebel against their parents. They actually don't want to rebel. They just want to be heard and they want to be able to like just be trusted for those decisions. And I think it also, you know, when I'm thinking back at my mom, like, you know, I wonder if did she trust her own self that she trained me properly? You know, did I
Yeah.
do enough? She did. She really did. I think I would have been able to I think if she had left me alone at 12 years old, like honestly, the way she raised me, I think from 12 on would have been able to like literally sustain myself. Like that's how good she was at like, you know, training me. But I guess maybe as parents, you know, sometimes you're never kind of sure, like, did I do enough? That's what I usually hear a
Yeah.
lot from homeschool parents. Did I do enough work? Did I do this enough? Is this okay? Is that something you hear a lot from parents?
Oh, yes. What I tell parents is you will fail them. There will be something they won't not learn. There will be some skill that you missed over. There will be something they can't do. But the same is true in any school setting. It's just a fact of life. We can't teach them everything.
Right.
And not only that, they don't want to learn everything. There have been so many times that I have planted seeds because I've said something over and over. And then one of my daughters will hear it from someone else and they're like, Mom, did you know? Yeah, I've only been saying it like every week for the past 2 years, but I'm glad it finally sunk in. But if we didn't plant those seeds, then there would be no place for that to grow from somebody else saying it.
Yeah. With all like learning challenges that are arising nowadays, how do you help parents navigate that when it comes down to being able to create an atmosphere in the household that, is conducive for just growth in these
Yeah.
areas?
It goes back to something you said earlier. The children we have were placed in our homes
Mm.
for a purpose. We know our children best. We know their struggles. I have one who is very gifted, but she struggles with anxiety and executive function skills. I have another one who has dyslexia, and the academic work is really challenging for her. So I have two very different needs that I'm trying to meet, but God gave them to me because I can find what they need. And so my goal in helping parents is to just, one, give them the confidence that they can do it, that they don't have to be able to teach everything. There are so many resources that we can get now, but also that it's okay for your child's education to look different than your neighbors, than your other child's. I mean, my
Wow.
oldest, her transcript looks vastly different than what my younger ones is going to look like. And that's totally fine. I mean, we were talking on a walk this evening with my younger one that, I'd be okay if you want to start that blog you've been thinking about your junior year, because you're going to be learning about graphic design and web development and stuff like that. And that's writing. That would be an excellent extension of what you're learning. And it's something that excites her.
Wow.
So tailoring their education to their interests and their needs can really help them overcome a lot of the frustration that comes with learning challenges.
Yeah, and also like I started thinking of like when you were talking, the first thing that came to my mind was like the comparison game. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
don't compare yourself. Like, it's not about that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that individualized opportunity to specialize in one thing. Like, it makes me think back at how each kid is so very individual and how you learn individually. Like, for example, I struggled a lot in school with English. I struggled with history. So history and English were my weakest. I mean, like, a C was my 100, basically. Like,
Mm.
that's literally where I was. I mean, 100. Public speaking. Oh my gosh. I would have a panic attack every single time that I had to go speak in front of people. And wouldn't you believe it, that now as an adult, these are the things that I do and I do well. So it's like,
Yeah.
but I learned my history when I took an art history class. I was excellent in the arts, like drawing and seeing things and being able to like create things came so easily for me. Like, literally, I would get lost, like forget time. Like, time would just be gone while I'm drawing or painting or, in that element. Dancing, the same exact thing. If I was dancing, oh my gosh, time just left me. It was just not there. Even with acting, all those different things, public speaking, understanding what I'm talking about made me really scared. Acting did not make me scared. I don't know why, but that's just how it was. But anyway, I took a class in college, art history. And in 3 months, I learned, understood everything history from like, I think it was like from the 1500s to modern. It was crazy how much I began to
Mm-hmm.
understand through the lens of art. And I really feel sometimes like there are kids who are like, I just don't get this material. I'm thinking, man, you probably would totally get it if I can just approach it in your strength, and you would
Yeah.
see exactly all the same stuff. And that's why, the comparison game is terrible, because every kid is going to see things differently, because you're an individual adult, and God created you specifically for certain things to do in life. So
Yeah.
I love the fact that you can pin that and you pick up on that and you're able to share that with parents.
Yeah, just one example of how that plays out in our home with history. My older daughter is very mathematically inclined. She is planning to go to school to be an engineer next year. She learned world history through the context of studying about the Enigma code and the code breakers in World War II. And so she learned a lot about that time period, but it was all within that context. My other daughter will approach world history through the context. She loves fashion history,
Oh
fashion and
gosh.
design. So she's going to study the nurses from World War One and then make a nursing uniform from one of the countries from that time era. So it's not even apples to apples. They're so different, but they're both so excited that they can't stop reading. So they're reading things about these topics outside of school time that I haven't even assigned, and they find them because that's what they enjoy.
I love that. You see, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I mean, like, your daughters are probably learning so much about history, but it's like so niche. They'll be able to probably talk to people and understand, things.
Yeah.
And I love that. And that's exactly what happened for me. Like, I was able to see things in history. I learned history through the Rococo period, the way the architecture was, the type of paint they use, the kind of paint that they, and it's like, when your brain operates like that, it's just, it's okay to go with it. It's okay to
Is
go
real
with it.
life. I
Yeah,
mean, if you think about as adults, we don't study from a textbook. We go find a book that we find interesting.
exactly. Oh my gosh. That is amazing. Can you share some testimonies with us from like parents who have, just been able to be impacted by your work?
Yeah, the one that stands out in my mind the most, I had a coaching session with a parent, and they were preparing to pack for a 3-year trip,
Oh, wow.
and she wanted to know what to pack. And I'm like, I can't tell you what to take. So we started exploring the issues, and the issue was not at all what to take. The issue was mindsets that she had about her abilities and her confidence in God. And so once she got past that, she's like, I know exactly what I need to take. So
Wow.
it's not always about what we think the issue is. There's usually some underlying concern that once we can address that, then everything else seems to just fall into place.
Wow, Chris, that's powerful. Man,
Yeah.
you started this conversation with like a power punch. Like, it's just been like power nugget after power nugget. My gosh. How can people connect with you? Where can they find your resources and, just be able to connect up with you?
Yeah, I would love to connect. My website is triumphantlearning.com. And if they go to the resources, so triumphantlearning.com/resources, they can see all that I have to offer. There's my free resources, which cover a lot of the topics that we've talked about. And I have a podcast called All in a Homeschool Day, where we talk about everything about homeschooling,
I love it.
of managing your time and getting control of your emotions and building those relationships and then launching your children with success.
I love that. And it pains me to say that we have to wrap up. Oh my gosh, I can keep
It's been
talking
such
to
a great
you.
conversation.
Oh, it really is. So, is there like one big takeaway that you want to leave parents with from our conversation today?
Yeah, I would say you don't have to make big changes. You can just make a simple change. When my children were 7 and 10, literally my mantra was be the thermostat. And I would just go
Mm.
around repeating, be the thermostat, be the thermostat, be the thermostat when I would want to react. So that wasn't something major in the moment. It was literally just focusing on the next moment. But it has had a profound impact in our home, our relationships, and our homeschool over the past, 8 years.
Wow. Crystal, thank you so much for coming on, having this conversation, sharing your unmatched wisdom. Like, just the depth of it is awesome. And, it's very obvious it comes through like authenticity and experience, which is really the best type of wisdom, right? Like, it's the only kind of wisdom. So it's like, so thank you so much for coming on. It's just been a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you for having me.
If you love the conversations we're having here on the Homeschool Advantage podcast, follow or subscribe our podcast to stay in the loop and never miss this amazing content. And please highly consider taking a minute to leave a positive rating and review to help others like you discover this show. See you next time.